Hey guys, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle Corazao-Dinu, and I'm an intuitive counselor, energy healer, and channeler who loves to bridge the gap between the unseen world of spirit, intuition, energy, and consciousness so that it can apply to your everyday human experience. Today's video is an energy update for June 2022. I'll be going over the energy dynamics for mass consciousness, those in their awakening, and those in their embodied enlightenment. If you enjoy these videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started with mass consciousness. When I started to tune into mass consciousness, I saw this person standing in front of a mountain range with two big mountains right ahead of them. And they kind of looked dark and shadowy. The mountain on the left gave me the impression that it had to do with the mind. The mountain on the right gave me the impression that it had to do with low self-esteem. So the way I'd interpret that image is that mass consciousness is approaching two major challenges. They don't seem like far from it. They also don't seem close to it, but they do seem like they're approaching it. They might not be able to see it, but they can definitely start to feel it. And when I think about the challenges of a mountain, a lot of times a mountain is kind of symbolic of challenges, but maybe long-term challenges that might not be knocked out in a day, but maybe over time because it's really big. These are really big mountains that I was seeing. So let's start with the mind. Mass consciousness is definitely spiritually leaning towards change. I can tell when I tune into mass consciousness. In general, most of them are spiritually ready for change, but embodying the steps that they need to take to get to the change that they want is a different story. I see that their bodies and their human selves have to catch up to what they're spiritually ready for. And so going back to the mind, when I see mass consciousness is typically used to operating from a very linear way of relating to time and space. So what I mean by that is, let's say they have a goal, like they want to move to a new house, okay? And they had a series of steps to do that. And those steps were A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, all the way to Z. Typically, mass consciousness is used to taking a linear time scale towards their goals or towards change, where they have to do A first, then B, then C, then D, then E, then F, then G. All right, so that's what they're used to. However, mass consciousness seems to be preparing for bigger change. And one thing I noticed them preparing for is allowing their mind to go through adjustments. Now, I don't see them completely leaving this linear timetable or this linear way of perceiving life, but I do see them preparing to take bigger leaps. So instead of following the order of steps like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they would go from A to G, or G to M, or M to Z. It just seemed like they were getting ready to take leaps or bigger steps or just bigger leaps instead of this like really slow step-by-step linear way of navigating life. So in June, I definitely see one of the challenges that mass consciousness is going through is this mental adjustment and getting used to, I guess, expanding their relationship to linear time and how quickly things can change. You can think of mass consciousness as like a person behind a steering wheel who doesn't touch the steering wheel. Instead, they just let the energy of mass consciousness navigate and move their car. So the way I see the mind rebalancing in mass consciousness is that individuals will start to get little bursts of creative energy. And this will allow each individual to kind of try something new, start something new, connect with new people, change their everyday habits in a little way. And so instead of just someone's like sitting behind the driver's seat and behind the wheel and not touching it, this would be like mass consciousness putting their hand on the wheel and making very small adjustments in their everyday life, in which it can shift and change in small little ways. And this is enough change to kind of allow the mind to adjust to, like, oh, creative energy works differently in time and space. Sometimes it can speed it up, sometimes it can slow it down, sometimes you can skip steps and have a quantum leap or a big leap into change or something different without having to experience the very linear steps to get there. Now, the reason why self-esteem is another challenge that mass consciousness is approaching is because this change in mindset, or this change in perceiving from the mind and taking bigger leaps or bigger steps towards change, is very triggering for the self-esteem in individuals. They tend to have some tendencies to worry, to not trust the unknown, to feel helpless, to feel powerless, to feel unworthy of the change that they want or deserve. And so kind of going outside of that linear time, or just expanding their relationship to linear time and embracing a little of that creative energy in their life, is enough to trigger or activate a lot of self-esteem issues. Some of these self-esteem issues seem to stem from these attempts at trying to change their life and trying to make things work in their life, especially on a survival level, over and over and over again, and coming back around full circle each time to the clarity that they can't really change their lives. And this kind of enables a low self-esteem and reinforces a low self-esteem in that they can't create the lives that they want. Again, feeling more worried and helpless about their near future or distant future. So I generally see with these self-esteem issues that individuals in mass consciousness are starting to realize that even though they try to make change happen, it's not working, it's not changing, and they're starting to kind of realize on a personal level that they have to have a fundamental change happen in their lives. Like, think about the foundation of a building. Like, if the foundation cracks or the foundation is compromised, it really screws up the whole building. It can screw up the plumbing, the electrical, the walls. Like, everything can get really messed up if the foundation is cracked in a building. Okay, so this is the same thing energetically happening in mass consciousness. It's almost as if they've discovered, like, okay, I've been trying to fix the plumbing, I've been trying to fix the electrical, I've been trying to fix the drywall, I've been trying to fix the windows, I've been trying to fix everything in this house that is not working, but it's not gonna work. I've tried, it's not working, and now I realize there needs to be a change, a fundamental change. Everything has to be changed, starting with the foundation. So this is pretty big. I mean, this has to do with humanity's survival and their lifestyle and their everyday life, the way they take care of their bodies. So what I see coming in to help release these self-esteem issues is self-love, where you might see individuals in mass consciousness start to embrace more self-love. And instead of going with the group or matching society or going with the flow of society, they start to put themselves first instead of groups of people or other people in their lives. And by this, I mean they're just, making small adjustments in their everyday life. And, in terms of kind of rebalancing their own personal foundation, people in mass consciousness might start suddenly changing their diet, changing their exercise routine, embracing wellness, meeting new people, starting new, self-care regimens, anything related to their physical health, or their mental, emotional, or spiritual health on a foundational level seems to be up for change or up for rebalancing. And this is what's going to help kind of heal the self-esteem issues and rebalance the self-esteem issues, both self-love and just allowing this foundational change to happen in their lives. So let's go ahead and pull a few cards to see if there's any other information about mass consciousness we need to know about. All right, so the first two cards I pulled was the Tower and Page of Cups. The Tower and Page of Cups, both were reversed. So first impression I got from this card, the Tower card, was that, first of all, the Tower card can represent a situation in which kind of anything that's unstable basically falls apart. Anything that's not built on a strong foundation in one's life will be suddenly, perhaps, swept away. You can see in this card there is a little house with a squirrel in it, with some nuts. And I love this imagery because it shows that, squirrels are always prepared. They've always got like these nuts, and they prepare for the winter, and they build their house. They generally have this kind of totem of being like these prepared little critters, But even the squirrel can't be prepared for this because there's a flash of lightning that happens suddenly and hits the home and destroys it. Now, in this particular card, the home isn't completely destroyed, but instead you see all these butterflies kind of zooming out of the light, maybe chaotically. So this card is kind of revealing that you might be prepared, you might have, everything together, but something could happen out of nowhere that brings about a lot of transformation. It could be chaotic, but ultimately it leads to transformation. Okay. And the fact that we see this reversed, to me, the first impression I got was this isn't going to be sudden change. This is more likely going to be a long-term change where things slowly kind of transform over time. Things fall apart slowly, kind of like when you think of a fruit decaying. Like it doesn't happen all at once. It happens over days and weeks where food or like a fruit slowly decays. Same with these energies in mass consciousness, like the adjustments with the mind, the adjustments with self-esteem issues. These are showing up as mountains in the image that I saw and interpreted earlier because, going to the summit of those mountains and getting to the truth of the matter, would take some time. And so this card is really kind of reinforcing that interpretation and saying that, some of this rebalancing happening with the mind and mass consciousness, as well as the self-esteem, this is definitely going to be happening over time. Things are going to be falling apart slowly in the self-esteem and the mind of mass consciousness. And at the same time, there's going to be this slow transformation that happens. Clairvoyantly, I notice kind of an image of someone sprinkling pumpkin seeds into the ground. So for me, that tells me that, while these things are falling apart, it is creating the space for new seeds to be planted in mass consciousness around their foundation. So things might be falling apart slowly, but at the same time, things are slowly growing. So this isn't something that happens where like all the death happens at once, or all the destruction happens at once, or all the decay happens at once. I have a feeling that the decay and the new growth happening in mass consciousness around the mind and the self-esteem will all be happening at once. As something decays, something grows. Now, with the Page of Cups, this is a very youthful energy. And you can see this guy's got his head in the clouds. He's a dreamer. And this card can show a lot of creativity. However, this card was reversed. And so what I feel is that these self-esteem issues are causing a very immature way of people in mass consciousness, or individuals in mass consciousness, to use their creativity. In fact, their creativity may be very blocked. And so many times in the awakening process, we go through lots of purification. We go through lots of trials and tribulations. We go through dark nights of the soul, or dark nights of the human is what I like to call them. And we release lots of old energy dynamics, and we unattach from belief systems, and we let everything deconstruct. And eventually we get to a point where we're embodying our clarity, we're embodying our wisdom, we're embodying our knowingness, we're embodying our truth, and we have the wisdom to create with wisdom. And at that point, you're really free to create because you have the maturity and the wisdom for that. So here's mass consciousness, not yet mature to really create with wisdom yet. Going through some blockages around their creativity. And self-esteem has a lot to do with the heart. It has a lot to do with how we see ourselves, and how we relate to ourselves and others. And so it has a lot to do with the heart. And the heart is almost like a magnet. It can like really be attractive. It can attract you to things and people and experiences, and it can attract other people and experiences to you. And so when you have a self-esteem issue that's residing kind of energetically around the heart of mass consciousness, you are going to see blocked creativity and immature qualities of creativity. And this shows me, combined and reversed, is that there's going to be a slow decay of blocked creativity in mass consciousness. They might have little bursts of creativity every now and then working through blockages of creativity. But ultimately it leads to transformation, and ultimately it leads to an ability to imagine new things, imagine innovative ideas, have creative flow, start a new creative beginning. So ultimately this does hold a potential of transformation and creativity. All right, let's talk a little bit about wisdom and that's coming through in mass consciousness. When we talk about the immaturity of mass consciousness, especially related to their self-esteem, the way they relate to themselves and other people, and quite frankly, the way they relate to energy, it's very immature. They have a lot of maturity to go through. They have a lot of purification to go through so that they can be mature. And so the wisdom coming through here, that came from this deck, one of them is called Why. This card talks about questioning our motives, questioning why we want to create something, why we want to do something. Okay, so this is a good wisdom to help bring maturity to the things that we want to create. So if you find yourself in June tagging along with mass consciousness energetically, and you start to work through some of your own self-esteem issues, some of your own creative blockages, when you start dreaming of things that you want, are you asking yourself, why? Why do I have this motivation to create this thing, try this thing, do this new thing, change my life in a certain way? What is your why? Because, excuse me, this will ultimately bring about clarity. And when you're in clarity, you are more likely to experience miracles in your creativity. Because when you are clear, things can happen very fast. When you're clear, you know exactly what you want and exactly how to do it and when you want to do it. Okay, so this Y card is essentially saying, you know, don't just dream up things that you want to do in your life. Don't just create for the sake of creating. I mean, you can do that. But if you want to create from maturity, you might want to question your motives. And this, again, this is for mass consciousness. And if you find yourself going through a similar energetic experience as mass consciousness in June, it might be a good way to filter out what you want to use your creative energy for. Why do I want to create this? Why do I want to do this? Why am I attracted to this? And start to invite more clarity into your space. The other card that came out as far as wisdom for mass consciousness in June is this Go the Distance card. There's this cheetah crossing the finish line in the desert. Now, cheetahs are usually fast. They're known for being an animal that sprints, okay? But Going the Distance card actually wants you to think of something as a marathon, that this is a long-term situation. This rebalancing of self-esteem on the planet, rebalancing of the mind on the planet. This is a long-term thing. Again, we got that from this reversed tower card, that this transformation happening in the mind and in the self-esteem on the planet is going to be happening slowly, kind of like a slow decay process that leads to transformation at the same time. This card is reinforcing patience, the need to keep the bird's eye perspective in view, that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, so we can pace ourselves. Okay, we need patience and understanding that this isn't all going to happen at once. It's not going to necessarily happen fast, this rebalancing of the mind and self-esteem on the planet. And so we need to think about the long haul, going the distance. So if you do find yourself going through your own energetic rebalancing, sometimes we can be, you know, really impatient with that and say, when is this ever going to end? When am I going to stop going through all this transformation? You know, the second that I feel like I have balance, I start losing it again. I can't function. I can't, you know, hold a job. I'm having a hard time connecting with myself, orienting with myself. Everything keeps changing inside of me. You know, all this evolution can be frustrating, especially when you just want it to stop, you know. So instead of trying to stop it or instead of trying to rush it, you might just reassure yourself that this is happening over time. This is going to take a while. You want to think of this as a marathon. If there's something not working about all the energetic change that you're going through, you might want to start thinking about how you can adjust your lifestyle so that you can accommodate this long-term energetic rebalancing over the course of months or years, because it might be a while. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to move on to those of you in your awakening. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. Hello to those of you in your awakening. Thanks for watching. In June, I was seeing an image of someone detaching from and releasing old identities and old roles, specifically around their shoulders and their back. And so what that tells me is that there has been an attachment to past life identities, past life roles, or past life or just roles or identities that you've had in this lifetime in the past. Generally, I see those of you in your awakening kind of stuck in the past, which is why you're releasing these identities and these roles. Because ultimately, when you release these identities and these roles, eventually you will integrate them into some type of unification or wholeness within you. However, until you get to that integration phase in your life, currently the reason why I see you releasing these identities and these roles is because you are welcoming in a new identity or role to help you through this next phase of your awakening. Now, these old roles and old identities that you may be detaching from or releasing have to do with identities or roles that were attached to fear. Fear of commitment, fear of responsibility, uh, fear of change, fear of the unknown. Now, it does seem like those of you in your awakening are preparing for a new role and a new way of navigating your life. The first image that I saw of kind of the old version of you was kind of like a community of bees in a beehive. Most of the time, the beehive, acts as a group. Each person has their role in the group. They live together, they work together, they create a community together. And every now and then, a bee will leave the group, go off, do their own thing, but they always return to the beehive. And that reminds me of your old role. Perhaps those in your awakening, perhaps those of you in your awakening were maybe navigating your life from group energy. Maybe your family was having you navigate your life a certain way. Maybe your workplace, maybe your city, your town, your culture, your society, you name it. There's different levels of groups in our lives. But in general, I noticed how the old roles that you were in were kind of attached to that group energy and were having you navigate life from that group dynamic. However, the new role I see you bringing in is more like a bear in the woods. Kind of reminds me of someone who's more independent. They don't really involve themselves in a lot of group energy. They tend to walk their path solo, and they do have phases, bears, in which they hibernate. And for you in this new role, you might go through phases where you slow down and go deep within. Now, generally, bears also represent this ability to bring old fears from our subconscious up to the surface for them to be brought to light or for them to be confronted in some way or resolved in some way or transmuted in some way. So this is kind of the essence in which I see you moving towards to help you through your next phase of awakening. I do notice that you're on your way towards change in your life, but this is not the type of change that happens to you spontaneously, that feels like it comes out of nowhere. This is more of a conscious change that I see you making in your life, which means that you're doing it by choice. So it kind of reminds me of someone, for example, that maybe they've been living with their family their whole lives and suddenly they decide to move to a new country or move to another state or move across the country. They kind of dump that old role of being in that group dynamic and suddenly they're very independent, kind of living on their own. So this is kind of the example I can give about some of the choices you may be making in your life where suddenly you step outside of group energy in some way. Maybe you study something new, start something new, move someplace, start a new relationship, but you're definitely stepping out of a group energy and walking on your path. And this is going to be unique for everyone in awakening because your reason for being here and the experiences that you want and created and designed for yourself in this lifetime are all going to be very unique to you and your essence. And ultimately your unique experience of awakening and embodied enlightenment. So, it's going to be different for everyone what changes in their life and what you choose to change in your life, but it does seem like it ultimately takes you further out of group energy and more into independence or a type of solo experience or an experience where you have more solitude with yourself on your path. Now, this doesn't mean that you're suddenly not going to have a family or community or be involved in society in any way. That's not what I mean by this. It just means that energetically, you're kind of stepping out of that group energy and more into your own essence. And of course, if you live in society, you will continue to engage with family, friends, community, society, but you'll be kind of walking your own path and having your own role versus immersing yourself deeply into groups of people. Now, some of this change that you might be choosing in your awakening at this point is a type of redirection or realignment or some kind of pivot in your life that ultimately aligns you with what you're here to do, your purpose, the experience that you want to create and have. And with that said, this new role that you're stepping into, or this new aspect of you that you're stepping into, in a way is interested in the unknown, curious about the unknown, and embraces the unknown. Unlike some of these old identities that you may be unattaching to at this point, which feared change, feared the unknown, feared commitment to self, feared self-responsibility, and instead probably clung to family, groups, communities, and held on to responsibilities and roles based in those groups. All right, so let's go ahead and pull some cards, see if we have any other information about June 2022 for you. Wow, okay. So the first two cards we get is Sun, upright, and then we get Ten of Cups, reversed. So this Sun is telling me that you have a lot of clarity about this choice or this change that you may be choosing in your life, and that ultimately it's a very positive experience. An experience that might open you up, an experience that gives you more clarity, an experience that feels positive, an experience that is overall optimistic. You can see this image of the sun. She's connecting with the sun. It's bright, it's huge, she's open. This is a beautiful card indicating, this new path you're walking. If you step out of a group dynamic or just more clearly onto a path or a choice that is for you and comes from you, this is saying that, the future is bright for you. It's a really good choice that you're making. It supports you, and you seem to have a lot of clarity about it. Now, this card, Ten of Cups, is also a really positive card. Generally represents this harmony and these beautiful relationships, supportive relationships, kind of this fulfilled feeling. However, this was reversed. And so the message that I'm getting about this card is that when you make a choice to leave a type of group dynamic and you put yourself first and you start to, let's say, walk a different path that you chose, you might at first experience some disharmony in your relationships. Maybe miscommunications, maybe not feeling seen or heard, maybe not feeling worthy of love, just maybe struggling with conflicts in relationships. But really all this is saying is that there's a delay in having this, because ultimately you realigning with yourself and your path and what you're here to do is ultimately going to bring you to this experience, this really spiritually and emotionally fulfilled experience of harmony with yourself, harmony with your relationships, having divine connections, meeting the people that are really there for you to meet, that support you, that love you, that meet your needs, that see you, that hear you, that understand you, that want you in their lives. So if there's any doubts, and just these combined here, or is just saying you might have a little bit of conflict or disharmony with your relationships when you make this conscious choice, but you have so much clarity about it. There's so much sun shining on it that it's really not going to be that bad. I really don't see any kind of disharmony being that bad. It's just kind of like, whatever, they're disappointed, or, oh, whatever, they're just kind of, jealous, or, oh, whatever, they just don't really understand me. But it doesn't seem to be severe. It seems to be like overall an optimistic experience of you choosing something for yourself, of you reorienting yourself, or just pivoting to a new path, or realigning to a new path just for you. Ultimately, it would lead to this, something very positive for you. All right, I pulled a card for some wisdom for you in June, and I got this card, Between Worlds. I can see this flamingo not quite left, this flamingo has not quite left one world, which is kind of like dreary and gray looking, and stepping into a bright and colorful world right here. So between two worlds, definitely acknowledge that you're in a transition. Whatever you're leaving behind is old. You've learned all your lessons. There's nothing serving you in that situation anymore. You're ready to leave it. Yet you might be in a position where you don't really know what's coming next. You might be a little bit in the unknown and stepping into the new. And this is just saying that in a transition, it's important to embrace the unknown. Be curious like a child. Like, see those experiences that might be scary or unknown as, start to relate to them from curiosity versus fear. When you think about a bear, they're very curious. When they hear something in the tree, they explore the tree. They go into caves, they explore the woods. They're very explorative and curious. Same with you. This new role that you're coming into embraces the unknown, goes into the unknown, is curious about the unknown. And this is the wisdom coming through for you in June, is if you haven't quite stepped into that new pathway yet, or that new life yet, and you're still kind of leaving behind the old, kind of stepping into the new in a bit of a transition, this is saying to embrace the unknown with curiosity. Be as open as you would be if you were looking at a rainbow. Quite literally in this card, there are two people looking at this rainbow, You want to be like this, looking at the unknown as if it's something beautiful to discover, something delightful, something full of life, full of color. Be curious about it. All right. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with those of you in your embodied enlightenment. Hello to those of you in your embodied enlightenment. When I tuned into you in June 2022, I saw someone that was very connected with themselves. So immediately in June, I could see that June was going to be all about you bringing more presence into your body, more connection into your body, and more clarity into your life. But overall, that connection seems to be very strong. And that's important because I also see that in June that you'll be letting go of something. I get this impression that you may have been trying to adjust something, change something in your life, change direction, reset things. And ultimately, you've been getting a lot of clarity through that process. And so with that clarity, I see a lot of connection and a lot of clarity that allows you to let something go, or let go of many things at once that are causing you grief, creating some type of depression or sadness. But in general, I do notice a type of sadness or depression or grief that you're letting go of. And I ultimately just see you letting go of something that's not working. And you do seem to be very clear about it. It's not just something that happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. It's something that you choose to let go of consciously. And it appears to be related to something that's just no longer serving you anymore. And so these might be minor adjustments, minor changes that you're letting go of. It might be something bigger. I did get the impression that it was related to your relationship space, the way you relate to yourself, the way you relate to other people, the way you relate to energy or everything, as well as your self-expression. Maybe a change in communication styles, changes in the way you the way you communicate with yourself or other people, verbally, non-verbally, the way you express yourself. Maybe certain facets or aspects of you are, falling away while you start to embrace new facets of yourself in your communication styles or in your relationship styles. So, ultimately I see whatever you are letting go of, you're really ready to let go of it. You're really connected in that process of letting go of it. You're really present and you're very clear about it. So I ultimately see that there's going to be a big influx of, light, in your energy, in your body, in your space, bringing more presence, connection, and clarity into your being. Now, with that said, as you release some of the things in your life that have caused you grief, sadness, depression, just weighed you down in some way, no longer serving you, I do see that as you release that, you're immediately kind of allowing your next steps to come in. You're bringing in more awareness and more clarity into the way you take steps through your life. And ultimately, the image I got of that is kind of like you going off trail. If you're like on a hike, usually there's a trail there, and it's easy to walk on, and you don't really have to watch your steps. But this image that I saw of you, you were going off trail. You were kind of going on just exploring on your own. There wasn't even a trail there, and it didn't look like you were blazing a trail for anyone else. It just looked like you kind of going rogue, and just going off trail. And when you go off trail, like let's say in the woods, sometimes you can walk, and then sometimes you have to jump over a log or hop off a few rocks or leap over a stream. Not every step is the same. You actually have to bring a lot of awareness to your next steps and be flexible about how you take your steps so that you can navigate the forest floor, or that the floor that is not a trail, the rough terrain is what I'm trying to say. And so I do see a lot of flexibility coming into your next steps, and your ability to stay more present with your next steps and connected with your next steps and clarify your next steps so that you can kind of go off the beaten trail, off on your own, and just open yourself up to the new, exploring. I see a lot of exploring in that, just opening yourself up to the new after you release things, that are weighing you down, no longer kind of serving you. So there's definitely an explorative nature that I see, and a lot of next steps being illuminated, like a lot of your presence coming into your next steps around that. Now, I did notice for those of you in your embodied enlightenment, you may be having sudden releases of suppressed anger or suppressed creativity or creative energy come up to the surface. And I just noticed that you're using this for your next steps, as well as helping you to ultimately kind of update the way you present yourself to the world and the way you navigate in the world. Some of you may already have a knowingness about the way you desire presenting yourself to the world, or navigating the world. And I got that impression. So really, I just see you bringing a lot of awareness and creativity to that, so that it can be refreshed and updated. To me, it feels like you're doing a little bit of a reset in a way, letting go of the old and kind of embracing something new. And again, this looks very conscious. It doesn't look like something that happens spontaneously to you or for you. Seems like you are consciously choosing this. So let's go ahead and pull some cards, see if there's any other information for the month of June 2022. All right, so the first card that came out was Ten of Cups. Pretty interesting because those in their awakening also got this card. You got it upright, which means, there's this overall kind of completion energy or fulfillment energy that is very harmonious, especially in your relationships. This is kind of like that happy family vibe or happy relationship vibe, lots of love, spiritual connections, people supporting each other. people loving each other. There's this beautiful image of the rainbow. It's just kind of showing that beautiful harmony that can get you through any level of darkness here. That beautiful harmony. And I even pick up this kind of flow happening in the card with your group. So what this tells me is that, whatever you're letting go of, whatever you're choosing to release, could have been creating a type of disharmony for you in your relationships. Could have been making you feel incomplete in some way. Could be delaying a process in some way. But, I really see just whatever you're letting go of, it's a really good completion. It's like you're really ready for this energy of just being really whole, fulfilled, having harmony in your relationships, enjoying life. I pulled a couple more cards to help clarify that card. And I got this 9 of Cups, another really beautiful, great card. And then I got the Judgment card reversed. And so immediately I got this feeling that you've had this calling to kind of change something in your life. You can see like the spirit coming out of her, kind of leading her towards something. Like there's this calling, this soul calling towards something new. And this has been reversed with this. And so it reminds me that you've been really hoping for something, maybe really dreaming about something, working towards something, and maybe, kind of ignoring your calling, or it's just been a very slow process, or just hasn't happened yet. And this is a sign, that, this is kind of like a wish granted card. Something's going to be happening that you've been wanting to happen for a while, and it's a part of following your calling. You haven't been able to have this because you were ignoring your calling, and now that you start to follow your calling, or follow this new direction, or listen to yourself and let some things go that aren't working for you or not serving you, you get this kind of wish granted card. Kind of like finding that treasure that you've been seeking kind of comes in. So overall, this is, kind of pointing out that this connection and this presence and this clarity that you're really bringing into your body, it ultimately, you can't ignore your that calling anymore, or that thing that's been nagging you for a while to let go of or to move towards. But you do. And it ultimately leads to something that you've been seeking, something that you've wanted. Let's go ahead and pull some cards for wisdom this month. All right, the first card that I pulled for wisdom was flexible. Yep, flexible, number 19. And, generally this card talks about being rooted in yourself, but also being open-minded, teachable, malleable, open to new things, willing to bend, willing to be flexible. So June is not a month in which you need to be rigid. It's a month in which you need to be rooted in yourself and your clarity and your presence, yet flexible with some of the changes, some of the things you may need to learn, some of the things you might need to embrace. It's important to keep an open mind and stay curious. I particularly see the need to be flexible with the way you survive, like your foundation in life, like your day-to-day, caretaking, your day-to-day habits, your routine, your lifestyle, the way you take care of your body, the way you eat, sleep, exercise, what you do to survive, how much sleep and rest you get. All of that looks like it might need some flexibility. Right, so the other card I pulled for wisdom was come to the edge. And so this card usually speaks about taking a leap, taking a risk, embracing the unknown, letting go of the fear and accepting risk. I particularly see you dealing with childhood fears of the unknown. You know, parts of your inner child that tend to cling to comfort or attach to something that is comfortable or soothing. And I see the need to, discern that and, take a risk based on your whole self and all that clarity and that presence versus just a single part of you that might be uncomfortable about leaping into the unknown. So I feel like picking another card, see if there's anything else that comes through. All right, so the last two cards I pulled was love and soul work. So you can see there's a heart here and two hands open to receiving it. There's definitely something in your heart, that has been calling you. You've kind of been denying it. I was noticing that, some of the things that you're letting go of and some of the new steps that you're taking in your life has to do with your relationship space, the way you relate to yourself and others, or the way you relate to your energy, as well as your self-expression. So, this is showing me that, there's something that has been in your heart that you've been open to, but not necessarily following the call. And this is kind of encouraging you to follow your heart. The image that I see in this card clairvoyantly is kind of like a forest fire. Whatever you're leaving behind, it's kind of like a renewal. It's like a fire, a forest fire. When a forest fire happens, it's a renewal process. It might, completely wipe out the forest and destroy it, but it ultimately cleanses the forest and allows it to grow back in a new way, sometimes in a healthier way. And so I do notice that, if there's anything in your relationship space that has not been working for you, I do see a type of big renewal happening that leads to more harmony. The other card that came out is soul work. Again, I think it's kind of indicative of the message that I've been saying, is that there has been some type of calling or some type of intention about what you want to do, how you want to be here, how you want to live your life. And you have been delaying it, procrastinating it, or just not following it or not allowing it. And this card is coming out and saying, no, this thing that has been calling you, you really need to listen to it. It's your soul's work. It's why you're here. It's your purpose. You need to listen to it. There's a lightning bolt in this image. It might be like you have a sharp insight about, a very clarifying insight that you might get in June about your soul purpose and why you're here or what you want to do. That calling may have come in quickly, so fast that maybe you don't trust it or believe it or have a hard time following it. But there's a lot of routine in this card that I feel kind of coming from the bee. The bee kind of gets up and it has a role and it does the same thing over and over again each day. It does its job that it's here to do. And, Same thing with your soul purpose or your life purpose or just the calling that you maybe have been getting for a while. You know, it's breaking up your routine. It's changing something that was a routine. It's saying something has to change. This is no longer in your purpose. You have to embrace something different so that you can stay on your purpose, stay in your purpose. But again, this all looks really good. You know, you might be taking a little bit of a leap or embracing the unknown or taking a risk. It might require you to be somewhat flexible. But ultimately, it's like bringing you to this love, this harmony, this fulfillment of your heart, completion. And, you know, in June, you might be experiencing this wish, something that you wanted for a while, that finally starts to come to fruition in June. And ultimately, you know, helps you to realign with your purpose or your calling. All right. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. And I hope you guys have a good June. Take care.